For 10,000 years, nothing has lived in the Dead Sea. The water is 10 times saltier than the ocean. No fish, no plants, no microorganisms, just sterile, toxic brine that kills everything it touches. Until now. Scientists monitoring the shoreline have discovered freshwater springs erupting from the sea floor, fish swimming in pools that were lifeless weeks ago, vegetation growing where nothing has grown for millennia. And the changes are accelerating, spreading faster than natural processes can explain. Ancient prophecy described exactly this. Ezekiel 47 predicted the Dead Sea would come to life when fresh water flows from Jerusalem, that fishermen would stand on its shores, that the desert would bloom. It's happening, right now, exactly as written 2,600 years ago. Hit that like button and subscribe, because what's emerging from the world's deadliest water will shake your understanding of prophecy, science, and what comes next. Engedi, Western Shore of the Dead Sea, 2016. A photographer documenting the receding shoreline notices something impossible. Pools of water teeming with life, small fish darting between rocks, green algae coating surfaces that should be covered in salt crystals. He calls scientists from nearby Hebrew University. They arrive expecting a mistake. Dead Sea water kills instantly. Salt concentration of 34%, nearly 10 times normal seawater. Density so high, humans float on the surface. Nothing survives it. Nothing has survived it for recorded history. But the pools are real. The fish are real, and they're thriving. Water samples reveal the truth. These aren't Dead Sea pools. They're freshwater springs, erupting through the sea floor, breaking through layers of salt and sediment that have sealed them for thousands of years, creating pockets of livable water in the midst of the deadliest lake on Earth. The team identifies the spring sources, underwater formations they call sinkholes, though they're not sinking, they're rising. Freshwater pushing upward through cracks in the lake bed, pressure from subterranean aquifers forcing water to the surface, each spring creating a zone of life in the surrounding depth. By 2019, researchers document over 100 springs. By 2021, the number exceeds 300. By 2024, they stop counting. Springs are appearing faster than teams can map them. The phenomenon is accelerating. What started as isolated curiosities is becoming a transformation. The springs vary in size. Some barely trickle. Others gush thousands of gallons per hour. The largest create pools extending 50 feet across. And around each spring, life explodes. Algae forms within days. Small crustaceans appear within weeks. Fish arrive within months, carried by birds or flowing in through underground connections to freshwater sources. Species identified include tilapia, carp, and eel varieties native to the Jordan River and surrounding freshwater bodies. They shouldn't survive the journey to the Dead Sea. The salt should kill them instantly. But they're not just surviving. They're reproducing. Breeding populations establishing in spring-fed pools, creating permanent colonies in water that was sterile for 10,000 years. But the most shocking discovery comes from depth measurements. The Dead Sea is dropping. Water levels declining approximately 3 feet per year. Shores receding. Ancient coastlines emerging from beneath the brine. And as the water drops, more springs activate. More cracks open in the exposed lake bed. More fresh water breaks through. Geologists studying the phenomenon identify the mechanism. The Dead Sea sits atop enormous aquifers, underground water systems feeding from the Judean mountains. As the sea level drops, pressure differentials change. Weight of water above decreases, allows aquifer pressure to push upward more easily. The dropping sea level is triggering its own reversal, releasing the freshwater trapped beneath. Ezekiel 47. Written approximately 571 BCE during Babylonian exile. The prophet describes a vision: water flowing from beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, a river flowing east toward the Dead Sea, growing deeper as it flows, bringing life wherever it goes. Verses 8 to 9. This water flows toward the eastern region and goes down into the Arabah, where it enters the Dead Sea. When it empties into the sea, the salty water there becomes fresh. Swarms of living creatures will live wherever the river flows. There will be large numbers of fish, because this water flows there and makes the salt water fresh. So where the river flows, everything will live. Verse 10. Fishermen will stand along the shore. From En-Gedi to En-Eglaim, there will be places for spreading nets. The fish will be of many kinds, like the fish of the Mediterranean Sea. For 2,600 years, scholars debated this prophecy. Literal interpretation seemed impossible. The Dead Sea cannot support life. Its chemistry prevents it. Salt concentration too high. Mineral content too toxic. Oxygen content too low. Making the Dead Sea fresh would require replacing its entire volume, 11 trillion gallons, with fresh water. No natural process could accomplish this. So most interpreted it metaphorically: spiritual renewal, God's power overcoming death, symbolic language describing religious transformation, not physical reality. But the prophecy contains specific details: geographic markers, En-Gedi and En-Eglaim, real locations on the Dead Sea's western shore, multiple fish species, fishermen spreading nets, not vague symbolism, concrete, measurable predictions. And now those predictions are manifesting. Life appearing in the Dead Sea. Springs erupting at En-Gedi, exactly where Ezekiel named. Fish of multiple species. The prophecy isn't metaphorical, it's observational. Describing actual events seen in vision 2,600 years before they occurred. Other prophecies connect to this phenomenon. Joel 3:18. A fountain will flow out of the Lord's house and will water the valley of acacias. Zechariah 14:8. On that day, living water will flow out from Jerusalem, half of it east to the Dead Sea and half of it west to the Mediterranean Sea, in summer and in winter. Multiple prophets describing the same event: water flowing from Jerusalem, transforming the Dead Sea, bringing life to the desert, written across centuries. Different authors, consistent vision. Jewish and Christian eschatology both cite these prophecies as signs of the end times, events preceding major historical transitions. Messiah coming, New Age beginning, world transformation. The Dead Sea coming to life isn't just ecological curiosity. In prophetic frameworks, it's a clock, a countdown indicator, and it's not just religious texts noting the impossibility. Roman historians described the Dead Sea, called it asphaltites for the tar deposits, noted nothing lived in it. Greek geographers documented its sterility. Islamic scholars confirmed the same. For over 2,000 years of recorded observation, nothing lived, nothing could live, until 2016, until springs started appearing, until fish started swimming, until prophecy started becoming reality. Scientists studying the phenomenon identified geological changes making it possible. The Dead Sea Basin sits at a triple junction, intersection of three tectonic plates: African plate, Arabian plate, Anatolian plate. The region is geologically active, earthquakes common, fault lines numerous. Recent seismic activity has changed underground water flow patterns, earthquakes opening new cracks in bedrock. creating pathways for aquifer water to reach the surface, relieving pressure that built for millennia. The aquifers beneath the Judean mountains contain enormous volumes of water, fossil water from ancient climatic periods when the region was much wetter. This water has been trapped, sealed beneath impermeable rock layers, building pressure over thousands of years, the Dead Sea above acting as weight, preventing upward flow. But as the sea level drops due to Jordan River diversion, industrial mineral extraction, and climate change, that weight decreases. Combined with seismic activity creating new pathways, the aquifer water finds release. Geologists map the aquifer systems using seismic imaging and ground-penetrating radar, identify massive underground reservoirs extending beneath most of the Judean highlands, water volume estimated in trillions of gallons, if fully released, enough to significantly alter the Dead Sea's chemistry. The water quality surprises researchers. It's fresh, low mineral content, high in dissolved oxygen, essentially pristine drinking water that's been sealed underground for thousands of years. When it mixes with Dead Sea brine, it doesn't just dilute the salt, it creates zones of habitable salinity where life can establish. Mathematical modeling suggests a tipping point. Currently, freshwater springs constitute a tiny fraction of total Dead Sea volume. Not enough to change overall chemistry, but the rate is increasing. Springs appearing exponentially. If the trend continues, within 50 to 100 years, freshwater input could equal or exceed evaporation rates. The sea would stop shrinking, begin diluting. Salinity would drop. At 20% salinity, specialized organisms could survive throughout the sea. At 10%, normal marine fish could thrive. At 5%, it becomes an ordinary saltwater lake. At 3.5%, normal ocean salinity, it becomes indistinguishable from any other sea. Full transformation possible within a century or two if current trends continue. But there's something else, something researchers didn't expect. The water emerging from springs contains unusual mineral profiles, high in specific elements, calcium, magnesium, potassium, that neutralize toxic Dead Sea minerals like bromide. The fresh water isn't just diluting the brine, it's chemically transforming it, making it habitable faster than dilution alone would allow. Microbiologists studying the spring zones find extremophile bacteria, organisms adapted to high-salt environments, but surviving in the transition zones where fresh and salt water mix. These bacteria process minerals, alter chemical balances, essentially terraforming the water at microscopic level, preparing it for more complex life. Botanists document vegetation changes on newly exposed shorelines, plants appearing that shouldn't survive in this environment, reeds, grasses, shrubs, thriving in soil that's 30% salt. These are halophytes, salt-tolerant species, but even they shouldn't succeed here. Yet they're not just surviving, they're spreading, stabilizing soil, creating microclimates, preparing ground for less salt-tolerant species. The ecological succession is visible. Lifeless salt flats becoming algae-covered pools, pools becoming plant-ringed ponds, ponds attracting insects, insects attracting birds, birds spreading seeds and fish eggs. Within 5 years, spring zones progress from sterile to complex ecosystems. The Dead Sea isn't gradually coming to life, it's rapidly transforming. 2021. Researchers noticed the phenomenon spreading beyond spring zones, fish appearing in areas with no visible freshwater source, vegetation growing on shores with no apparent water supply, life establishing where it shouldn't be possible. Investigation reveals underground channels, networks of cracks and caves beneath the lake bed, connecting spring zones to each other and to the surrounding land. Fresh water flowing through these channels, creating hidden rivers beneath the Dead Sea floor. Fish using them as highways, plants accessing them as water sources. Ground-penetrating radar maps these networks. They're extensive, connecting most major spring zones, extending inland toward Jerusalem, creating an underground aquifer system that didn't exist or wasn't accessible before recent seismic activity. And the network is growing. Each earthquake, and the region experiences dozens per year, creates new connections, opens new pathways. The Dead Sea Basin is literally fracturing, releasing water trapped for millennia. The process isn't gradual geological change. It's accelerating catastrophic release. Hydrologists calculate flow rates, currently approximately 10 million gallons per day entering the Dead Sea through springs. Small compared to the sea's 11 trillion gallon volume. But 5 years ago, the rate was 2 million gallons per day. The flow is increasing exponentially, doubling every few years. If the pattern continues, within 20 years, daily freshwater input could reach billions of gallons, enough to measurably change overall salinity. Temperature measurements reveal another change. The Dead Sea is warming. Average water temperature increasing approximately 0.5 degrees Celsius per year. Doesn't sound like much, but in an ecosystem this extreme, small changes matter enormously. Warmer water holds less dissolved minerals, makes salt less stable in solution, encourages precipitation and removal from the water column. The warming connects to global climate change, but it also relates to the springs. Freshwater entering at temperatures slightly higher than the brine, bringing heat energy from sun-warmed aquifers. Each spring acts as a tiny heater, hundreds of springs collectively raising the sea's temperature. Satellite imagery reveals the transformation from above. False color images showing salt concentration. In 2016, the entire sea glowed uniform white, indicating maximum salinity. By 2024, green and blue zones appear around major spring sites, lower salinity areas where life thrives. The colors are spreading, growing, merging. The Dead Sea is literally turning from white to blue on satellite images. Tourism increases as word spreads. People want to witness the impossible. See fish in the Dead Sea. Stand where Ezekiel's prophecy manifests. Religious pilgrims, curious tourists, skeptical scientists, all coming to observe the phenomenon. Israeli authorities establish monitoring stations. Academic institutions launch research programs. International organizations send observation teams. The Dead Sea transformation becomes one of the most studied ecological events in modern history. But the most dramatic changes occur at Ein Gedi, the location Ezekiel specifically named. The largest spring cluster emerges here, pools covering acres, fish populations in thousands, vegetation creating oasis conditions. Visitors describe it as Eden in the desert, life erupting in abundance from what was Earth's most lifeless place. And it matches the prophecy exactly. Fishermen will stand along the shore from En Gedi to Eneglaim. Eneglaim, ancient name, location debated. Most scholars place it north of En Gedi along the western shore. And that's exactly where the second largest spring cluster appears. The geographic specificity of the prophecy aligning with physical reality. Local fishermen begin testing waters, casting nets experimentally, catching fish from the Dead Sea, sentence that was oxymoronic for 10,000 years, small-scale fishing starting, proving the prophecy's practical details, not just life appearing, but human activity responding to it exactly as predicted. The Dead Sea transformation raises questions beyond ecology and prophecy. It suggests other predictions might be literal rather than metaphorical. If this impossible event is occurring, what else might manifest? Isaiah 35. The desert and the parched land will be glad. The wilderness will rejoice and blossom. Water will gush forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. The burning sand will become a pool, the thirsty ground bubbling springs. Satellite data shows this happening, not just at the Dead Sea, but throughout the Judean desert. Vegetation increasing, springs appearing, areas barren for centuries showing green in recent imagery. The desert is blooming, another prophecy manifesting in real time. Joel 2:23. Be glad, people of Zion. Rejoice in the Lord your God, for he has given you the autumn rains because he is faithful. He sends you abundant showers, both autumn and spring rains, as before. Meteorological data confirms rainfall increasing in Israel. The region experiencing wettest decade in 50 years, reservoirs filling, aquifers recharging, agriculture expanding, the land becoming more fertile, exactly as prophesied for the end times. Archaeological discoveries parallel these changes, ancient prophecies being validated through physical evidence, sites mentioned in biblical texts being located and excavated, historical accuracy of scriptures being confirmed. The convergence of prophecy fulfillment, ecological transformation, and archaeological validation creates a compelling narrative. Religious communities interpret this as eschatological significance, signs that prophetic timelines are activating, that predicted events are beginning. Different traditions emphasize different aspects. Jews seeing Messianic age approaching, Christians seeing Second Coming preparations, Muslims recognizing end-time signs from their own texts. But the phenomenon transcends religious interpretation. The scientific reality is undeniable. The Dead Sea is coming to life through natural mechanisms that science can explain: aquifer release, seismic activity, climate change. Yet the timing, location, and specifics match ancient prophecy with unsettling precision. Skeptics argue coincidence. The Dead Sea was always going to change eventually. Geological processes continue, regardless of human observation. Prophecies were vague enough to match eventual reality. Confirmation bias makes believers see patterns that aren't meaningful. But the specificity argues against coincidence. Ezekiel named Ein Gedi, and that's where the largest springs appear. Predicted multiple fish species, and multiple species are documented. Described fishermen spreading nets, and that's beginning to occur. The prophecy wasn't vague, it was precise, and it's matching reality point by point. Scientists studying the phenomenon acknowledge the parallels without claiming supernatural causes. The geological mechanisms are natural, but the timing is remarkable. The prophecy is 2,600 years old. The Dead Sea has been dead for 10,000 years. Yet within our lifetime, within a single decade, the transformation begins and accelerates. The probability seems low for pure chance. Some researchers propose the prophecies weren't supernatural predictions, but ancient knowledge. Perhaps earlier civilizations witnessed similar events, recorded them. Later societies interpreted these records as predictions rather than historical observations. The Dead Sea might undergo periodic cycles, fresh and dead, alternating over millennia. We're witnessing one cycle transition that ancient people also witnessed. Geological evidence partially supports this. Core samples from the Dead Sea floor show layers indicating salinity fluctuations over geological time. Not dramatic fresh-to-dead transitions, but variations suggesting the sea wasn't always uniformly sterile. Perhaps 10,000 or 20,000 years ago, it was more habitable. Ancient people observed it, remembered it through oral tradition. Prophets recorded those memories as future predictions. But that doesn't explain the specificity, geographic markers, species details, human activities. Those aren't mythologized memories. They're precise descriptions matching current events. Either the prophets had extraordinary observational abilities or they accessed information through means we don't understand. The transformation continues accelerating. Projections based on current trends suggest dramatic changes within decades. By 2050, the Dead Sea could have 30% of its volume as habitable water. By 2075, majority habitable. By 2100, potentially indistinguishable from a normal saltwater lake. But there's a complication: human intervention. The Dead Sea level drops partly because of Jordan River diversion. Israel, Jordan, and Syria divert approximately 90% of the river's flow for agriculture and drinking water. The river that once fed 1.3 billion gallons daily into the Dead Sea now delivers barely 10% of that. Without this diversion, the sea level wouldn't be dropping. Pressure differentials wouldn't be releasing aquifer water. Springs wouldn't be appearing. Human activity is inadvertently triggering the prophetic fulfillment. We're causing the conditions that make the prophecy possible. Governments recognize this. Proposals exist for restoring Jordan River flow. Pipelines bringing water from the Mediterranean or Red Sea. Desalination projects, all aimed at stabilizing or restoring the Dead Sea. But would intervention prevent the prophecy from completing, or would it accelerate it by adding even more water? The prophecy states water flows from Jerusalem, not just from underground springs. The Temple Mount in Jerusalem sits at higher elevation than the Dead Sea. If water literally flowed from there, it would naturally descend toward the sea. Currently, no such flow exists. But could it? Hydrologists note that the same aquifer systems feeding Dead Sea springs extend beneath Jerusalem. The Temple Mount sits atop limestone, riddled with caves and water channels. Ancient texts describe springs beneath the temple. Rituals using water from these springs. The water infrastructure exists. It's currently inactive or diverted into cisterns and tunnels. But could seismic activity open new channels? Could water begin flowing from the Temple Mount toward the Dead Sea? Recent earthquakes affect Jerusalem. Minor tremors. Cracks appearing in old buildings. Underground surveys detecting changes in cave systems. Nothing dramatic yet, but the region's seismic activity is increasing. The same forces releasing Dead Sea springs are affecting Jerusalem's geology. The conditions for prophecy fulfillment continue developing. The final piece of Ezekiel's prophecy hasn't manifested. He describes trees growing along the water's banks, fruit trees producing crops year-round, leaves that heal. This clearly hasn't occurred. Dead Sea shores remain largely barren despite vegetation increases. No miraculous fruit trees, no healing leaves. But if the transformation continues, if the Dead Sea fully freshens, agriculture becomes possible. The Jordan Valley is fertile when water is available. The Dead Sea Depression, currently 1,400 feet below sea level, would become a warm, protected growing area. Year-round agriculture plausible. The healing leaves might not be miraculous, just medicinal plants thriving in ideal conditions. Every element of the prophecy has natural mechanisms making it possible. Aquifer release, seismic activity, climate change, ecological succession, human intervention, creating conditions for natural processes. Nothing supernatural required. Yet the prophecy described it all 2,600 years ago with remarkable accuracy. We're witnessing the impossible becoming possible, the dead becoming alive, prophecy manifesting as measurable reality, whether through divine plan, natural cycles, or extraordinary coincidence. The Dead Sea is returning to life exactly as ancient texts predicted. The springs are multiplying. The fish are thriving. The shores are greening. The prophecy is fulfilling. And if this continues, if the pattern holds, the Dead Sea will be fully alive within our children's lifetime. Ezekiel's vision becoming reality. The desert blooming, waters healing, life conquering death. Not in metaphorical spiritual realm, but in physical, measurable existence. The Dead Sea's resurrection, predicted 2,600 years ago, manifesting before our eyes, accelerating toward completion. The prophecy is clear about what this signifies. Major transition, new age beginning, divine plan activating. Whether you interpret that religiously or view it as natural cycles, humanity witnesses and mythologizes, the transformation itself is undeniable. The Dead Sea is coming back to life. The prophecy is being fulfilled. And what happens next? Whether the rest of the predictions manifest, whether this is isolated event or part of larger pattern, will be discovered as the transformation continues. One thing is certain. We're living through a moment ancient prophets described, watching the impossible occur, witnessing death become life. The Dead Sea resurrection is happening. Now, real, measurable, exactly as foretold.